The war had been raging for nearly 13 years when the first game-changing victory was had. We were ecstatic that it was a victory earned by us, the Federation. After over a decade of waxing and waning progress for both sides, we captured 15 whole systems and changed nearly half of the front lines. The representatives of every species in the Federation gathered in a huge summit that was televised across the stars so that every citizen could witness the celebrations. Everyone was giving glorifying speeches, sending out praise, gratitude, and encouragement. Many had bottles of various intoxicating substances that they healthily consumed in celebration. More than a few of them handed out medals to the fleet admirals that commanded the most successful fleets. Some even tried getting a leg in for the upcoming election season by announcing their intent to make the day of this groundbreaking victory a Federation holiday. Every representative was celebrating healthily. Every single one except the human representative. One of the more influential representatives in the Congress noticed this and believed that it was some kind of scripted act to bolster enthusiasm for the war effort. And, being one of the more powerful representatives, decided that it was their place to take action on that. They asked, "Our dearest human colleague, this victory has changed the tide of the war without question. And we're getting reports on the front lines that the Alliance's morale is plummeting faster and faster. There's no doubt that we'll begin capturing Alliance territory soon. This war will be over within no more than a few years. And that is thanks to your species, above all. Your strategies granted us the power to dominate the Alliance." At this point, every representative at the summit had hushed, excited to hear humanity's words that would surely twist into those of glorious celebration so that they may release bellows and cries of victory. "Enlighten us. Why the long face? Did you hope for a greater victory? For greater spoils from the Alliance's treasuries? Or are you awaiting the return to the joy of the fight? Tell us. Tell us why you seem so solemn." You could feel the anticipation across the galaxy. The summit was dead silent, everyone staring at the human representative. Everyone watching on their holo screens at home or at work, or on the front lines like me, most certainly had the same feeling in their chests, waiting for the human to burst forth with the most extravagant speech at the summit, so that they may also erupt in cheers. We joined the Federation nearly 200 years ago. We saw how the Federation operated, how each species interacted with each other and collectively ran the Federation. It wasn't without flaw. No system is, but we liked your system, so we joined forces with you. We trusted that we would enter an era of peace, of scientific revolution, of social development for every last sentient being that walked this universe. The humans stepped away from their seat in the summit hall, walking into the middle and staring each representative in the eyes. Then they looked at the recorder, fixing the trillions upon trillions of viewers with an expression I cannot describe, but it drew forth some deep primal fear in all of us. I would know because everyone in my squad, sheltered in our little bunker on the front lines, was trapped in paralyzed silence. Yet here we are, giving out medals and popping corks over a mere strategic victory. There's no social development here. No scientific revolution. Certainly no peace. No. The only thing I can see here is zealous praise and people that can't see past the crosshair. This war isn't liberating. It isn't clean, and it most definitely isn't backed by what the Federation is supposed to stand for. This war is gruesome. It's violent and honorless. And we're here, showering ourselves in alcohol and giving grandiose speeches that praise atrocities instead of tending to the victims of war and giving aid to those in distress. The humans spat out every word like it was bitter, pacing around and looking at everyone with a sour expression. Even their hand gestures seemed outraged and appalled, despite many species not using gestures to convey meaning. Horrific acts are idolized. People you would usually deem irredeemably criminal are rewarded handsomely. You've even started to worship your warships. This will all come falling down on you. Maybe before the war is over, maybe long after it ends, but it will. You'll see the husks of these war gods, monuments of violence to which you will have thrown away everything to honor and maintain. You'll look at them and see a hollow reflection in a broken mirror. You'll rule the stars, no doubt. Stars surrounded by nothing but ash. Humanity joined the Federation because it stood for something. Now look at you, praising genocide like fucking mongrels. The humans stormed out of the summit room, leaving nothing but a silence that screamed volumes. Representatives all began making attempts at salvaging the summit to undo what was already irreversibly done by the humans' monologue. Shortly after, the war resumed. Rumors about humanity's intent to withdraw from the Federation spread across the stars, and only a few months later they actually went through with it, returning to their home system. At first, we barely noticed a difference. Humanity was a relatively small species, only a few billion in size, so their contributions to the armed forces weren't high in number. But as the war raged on, our progress began to stagnate. It became harder and harder to win battles, even with the same strategies the humans had shown us, and life for anyone not on the front lines worsened as the Federation began conscripting people and laying out rations on materials and necessities. It was all for the war effort, of course. We had to repair and maintain our warships, and had to keep superior numbers on the front lines. It took another 20 years to end the war. We snuffed out the alliance, that was certain. We subjugated the few civilian population centers wise enough to surrender to us. We dissolved their fleets, and we executed their government. We celebrated our success over the alliance, and our newfound dominion over much of the galaxy. Despite the toll the war took on us after humanity abandoned the Federation, we felt invincible as a result of our victory. We thought that everything would be able to return to normal, that we could lick our wounds and carry on doing what we did before the Alliance stirred up trouble. We were wrong, of course. As we tried to ease back into our pre-war life, the true effects of war set in. Us soldiers returned to homes stripped of many valuable materials, to families that were scraping by on rations more pitiful than our meager mestres. A famine struck shortly after the war, dwindling the already small supply of food that many species needed to survive. In the hopes of combating this and raising morale, the Federation commissioned expeditionary fleets to colonize former Alliance worlds so that we could establish new agricultural facilities, and those same fleets returned barely months after being sent away, all bearing the same grim news of the Alliance worlds. Only the ones that surrendered were even habitable. Many of the planets had lost their atmospheres or were suffering severe nuclear winters as a result of the orbital bombardments which had subjected them to. The thing is, it wasn't like we could take the food supplies from the few surrendered Alliance worlds either. Not only was most of the Federation unable to eat the food they produced, but the Federation had too many mouths to feed. It didn't help that those worlds sent out requests for food supplies, because they too had fallen under famine. Our problems were, of course, not limited to food. There was talk of infighting between some of the Federation species, and even within species the Council denied this, thinking it would help with morale, but their denial of an increasingly obvious problem did the exact opposite. Our planets were becoming increasingly unsafe too, what with the pollution created by hyper-industrialization, caused by the need to manufacture and repair our warships. As time passed, the Federation became increasingly divided, with disputes over who owned what, who needed what, and who was crossing lines that hadn't ever been established. It didn't take long for the first shot to be fired, only 5 years after the war against the Alliance ended. Nobody wanted to fight anymore, not after enduring years of famine and poverty right after a grueling 30-year war. But the Federation Council, now divided, thought the right way forward was to stomp out these traitors that were demanding unreasonable things. Because a meal on the table was so unreasonable. I had resigned from the military at this point, but I saw many of my friends forced to fight people demanding nothing more than a good government. People that had only months before been part of our Federation. It wasn't a fair fight. The Federation's fleet was far superior to the ragtag band of ships that the traitors had amassed. But the small fleet still dealt a blow not even the Alliance could. They blew up the Federation's Horizon ship, the largest ship that we had ever built. And though we didn't know how they predicted it, we had won the war, all right. But many of the worlds we now ruled over were nothing more than barren rocks. Our own worlds were becoming increasingly uninhabitable. We were plagued by disease, by famine, by poverty, the Federation Council was becoming more and more desperate to cling to any sense of stability. And then, on holoscreens across the Federation, people stared at the twisted metal corpse of the horizon of their war god. The Federation was on the brink. All it would have taken was one last mistake, and we would meet the same fate as the Alliance. But one member of the Federation's Congress offered up a solution. A way to fix things. The Federation's fate was sealed the day humanity withdrew, and this representative believed that if humanity had the foresight to predict the Federation's destiny, then surely they had the knowledge to guide us to safety. With no alternative or better options available, the Federation took this idea and ran. They gambled the entire future of our Federation on the chance that humanity would help us. Many of us didn't believe it would work. I certainly didn't. Humanity abandoned us because of this war and called us animals on their way out. The odds of them helping us recover from the war was unlikely, especially given humanity's affinity for spite. The Federation sent out their whole fleet, with a specially selected diplomatic team to meet with whatever representatives humanity would offer. I was a part of this team, selected because I had experience on the front lines alongside human soldiers. The fleet wasn't much at this point, only a few battle-scarred command ships and 20 tactical vessels. The journey to humanity's home was uneventful in and of itself, but the closer we got to Sol, the more questions we had. When we were about halfway there, the sights started, but it was only every few systems. Before long, though, we saw it in every single system we passed through. Planets had scars large enough to house our entire fleet, rings with fragments of their own crust and debris of fleets long since destroyed orbited the barren rock. Stars were dimmed, many with clouds of their own dispersed matter trailing them. Our entire fleet passed through graveyards of ships that outnumbered us far more than 1,000-fold. System after system was like this until it wasn't. At some point, planets weren't scarred, stars weren't weakened, fleets weren't scattered remains. No, we started finding planets that were fractured into countless shards, the frozen cores of stars that had been drained by some unimaginably powerful technology. We believed that these systems had interstellar anomalies too, until we discovered that those huge voids that reflected radio signals weren't mere anomalies. They were warships that dwarfed stars, and they were warped and bent in a blood-chilling display. They had been destroyed by weapons we couldn't even begin to comprehend. But these weren't just ships bigger than stars, not just vehicles of war. No, we were finally enlightened after years of wondering what the human representative meant in their speech, and after years of wondering how they knew what would happen to the Federation, we finally understood. These were monuments to violence, to which countless trillions of lives must have thrown away everything just to honor and maintain, only for their efforts to be in vain. These husks were the result of relentless worship and sacrifice being met with the indifference of war. These were the corpses of humanity's war gods. By the time we reached humanity's home system, our supplies had been used up. We were running on nothing but desperate hope that somehow humanity would pity us enough to give us their scraps. Our hope almost died when we saw that they had a fleet that dwarfed even the Federation's original fleet. Their attention solely on us. They sent us a message first, before we could even begin to beg and grovel at their feet. But they didn't offer us diplomatic service. They didn't ask why we were there. They didn't try to ward us off like pests. No, the only thing they asked us was if we wanted to have dinner with them. After we had given them our broken sobs of unfettered gratitude, they fed us. We were like animals. We had no manners or decency. We tore into whatever food they offered us, sating hunger we had all had since before the end of the war. And despite our disgraceful behavior, the humans treated us with the same respect as they did each other. Now the Federation understands, I hope. The commander of the fleet that had met us on our arrival was strange. They weren't in a flawless suit adorned with medals and symbols of honor. They were dressed in the common human attire of a hoodie and jeans. I wouldn't have guessed they were a fleet admiral, were it not for the cap adorned with an insignia humanity used to signify their expeditionary fleet admirals. We have aid fleets on the way already, to help anyone in need. We sent them off as soon as we got word that the Federation had sent you guys to us. We had no words. We were all too stunned by humanity's willingness to help and uplift us in spite of everything. Somehow, one of us, me, I think managed to squeeze out the simple question of why they would even consider helping us. Because in this universe, there's no kings, no gods. There's only us, only people. If someone trips over, you help them back up. If they're struggling with an equation, you work on it with them. If they're hungry, you offer them a meal. Anything that's alive is capable of it. Everyone can choose to give it. It's what gives existence zest and purpose. It's the common denominator of life. We fixed the fleet admiral with looks of complete cluelessness. We were baffled and weren't sure what they meant. We were fatigued from stress, hunger, and travel, of course. But that shouldn't matter. The answer was so blindingly clear, so stunningly obvious, that it went right over our heads.